So today is our last day of mindfulness, of talking about mindfulness. We've talked about it for a month and we're ready to move on, right? We've got it. Clearly, I'm joking. Mindfulness is so foundational and something we'll continually practice, even as we begin to discuss the other factors of awakening. On the surface, mindfulness sounds simple, being present in a non-judgmental and non-self-referential way. But it's not easy. As Susan frequently says, our primary challenge is to remember, to be mindful, which is so true. Don't you feel that? I know I do. We're mindful for a few moments and then we lose it. We forget. We get lost in some train of thought or some daydream or story, and we're gone for short or maybe longer periods until we remember again. And it's not about judging ourselves for forgetting. That's the nature of the untrained mind. But it's forever interesting to me why mindfulness is so hard to sustain. After all of our practice and all of our good intentions, why do we lose it over and over, especially in those times when we want to sustain it? So that's what I want to explore a bit today. How do we sustain our mindfulness? How do we maintain our interest? And I don't think there's a pat answer or a particular technique that just says, just do it this way. But I think there is a way of orienting ourselves that helps us, a quality of attention that wants to stay. I just spent a week on the coast of Maine in a little rustic cottage that was hanging over the water. And if you know Maine, you know that there are a lot of small peninsulas and inlets along the entire coast, which means that the view is not one of an open, uninterrupted expanse of ocean that you might find in other places when you're on the ocean. But instead, the view is of distant islands, fishermen, sailboats, lobster traps. And on the shoreline, it's not just a sand beach, but there are birds and rocks and seaweed. And in this cottage, there was a side porch where I would have my morning coffee each day. And I'd watch the sunrise reflecting on the water as the tide changed. As the day began, it was so quiet. And yet there was a lot of activity. There were fishing boats getting ready for the day and lots of bird life beginning to awaken. And there were all these patterns in the water, even the occasional seal raising its head. On the first morning, I saw these particular ripples out a distance in the water. And the gulls were congregating. Some were swooping down to the water. Others were circling above. It seemed like something was going on. So I reached for my binoculars to see more clearly what was happening. And I noticed that the water was breaking and that there were splashes happening in this one area. And then I noticed an eagle coming in to dive close to the water. And as the eagle dove, the gulls dispersed. There was this whole world of activity happening. And each day that I was there, I spent long lengths of time looking at the landscape, noticing, wondering, exploring, just curious, and feeling very contented. It was one of those aha moments when I realized that this is the quality of interest that supports my mindfulness. It was non judgmental, non identified, and very interesting. I was that caring observer. And it wasn't hard to do. There was no technique, but there was definitely an engagement and an interest because my mind and heart were oriented in a particular way. My mind heart was relaxed, open, observant, and I could actually feel it in my body. I hope that I've described this experience, my experience, enough that you might also get an inkling and begin to feel that sense of interest and curiosity too. Notice, what does it feel like and when does it arise? Sustaining interest is an orientation. And a lot of other talks this month have pointed to aspects of that. Jay spoke on Monday about the speed in our lives to which we've become so habituated, how quickly we become restless and bored, and the mind becomes agitated. So, can we orient to slow down and settle just a bit? And Bill spoke about uniso manasakaro, an attention that recognizes the newness or the birthing of each moment, one after the other. Instead of the ho hum of another breath, of another trip to the grocery store, can we orient to the newness of the moment? How is it different from the last moment? I felt both of these qualities as I was sitting on the porch in Maine. I was relaxed and taking in the newness of my surroundings. So the conditions were just right for interest to arise easily and naturally. And think about it. Not only is there a big world out there, there is a vast and unexplored environment inside us. There's a whole landscape and life happening inside. And truthfully, I don't think we're very familiar with it. Not really. So, can we become curious and interested and be engaged with our inner world in this same way that we look out at the ocean? From the very beginning of our practice, we can orient ourselves in this way. When we sit, even right now, as we're each sitting and listening, as we begin to settle, how do we know we're sitting? How do we know in our bodies? How do we know that our hands are in our laps or moving around as I'm speaking with my hands? It's not as a thought, but it's a felt experience, felt from the inside. How do we know that we're taking an in-breath as opposed to an out-breath? What's the experience? And can we explore whether that sensation of in or out is pleasant or unpleasant? Or maybe it's just neutral. If neutral is a place that seems boring and that you tend to lose interest, look a little bit closer. What does boring feel like? I found that most sensations that I label as neutral, if I look a little more closely, are really slightly unpleasant. Interesting. I just noticed the other day that as I began to settle in my practice, that the settling, that relaxing, was not a straight line. I didn't become steadily more at ease, but instead I opened a bit and then I tightened up again. I opened again a bit more. Each gradual opening was pleasant, and the intermittent tightenings were slightly unpleasant. Interesting. I'd never really noticed that before. When we attend to our experience with some relaxed interest, we begin to see distinctions between things. There are particularities of what's happening rather than generalities of what we think is happening. And I remember an early teacher of mine saying that Buddhism is a study of particulars, not of generalities. It's like lifting up the binoculars because we're interested. We want to see things a little bit more clearly. What are our inner workings? We are pretty complex beings, and there's a lot going on internally. We can go on. We can explore our world of emotions. How do I know I'm sad or angry or frustrated or happy? What specifically is happening that lets me know this? Not why is it happening, but what is happening? How does that feel? It's not about the storyline. Being mindful is not about having interest in our story. We're generally pretty good at that part. And that's the part we work with in therapy. But instead, finding interest in the process. What is happening and how do I know it's happening? There are so many worlds inside of us. There's the internal physical world that's such a good anchor for our practice, noticing the physical sensations that are arising all the time. There's also the world of cognizing and thoughts, the realm of the mind. It's a bit more challenging because our thoughts come so quickly, but as we quiet, we can gain clarity about our thoughts. And there's the world of emotions, the realm of the heart that we turn towards, open to, and hold with care. And each of these worlds intertwine. It's a complex and wonderful thing that's always happening inside ourselves. There are so many ways that we can orient and explore. And how can we not be curious about this? This is our lives unfolding moment to moment. So thank you all for your attention, for listening. And let's begin to sit with that kind of question behind us, curious. Even right now, curious. What does your body need right now in terms of movement in order to be able to sit quietly? It's probably different what you need today from what you needed yesterday. Oops. So just spending some time offering that to ourselves. Shaking it out, stretching a bit. Not forgetting these little muscles in our face that hold a lot of tension. And as that feels complete, coming into a sense of stillness and finding our bodies in this posture. And maybe just scanning in an easy way with that light question of, how do I know I'm sitting? Maybe it's the pressure of your buttocks on the chair. Maybe it's that sense of an erect spine. And bringing that same quality of attention to those first breaths that you become aware of. And perhaps taking a deeper than normal in breath. And just noticing, how do I know I'm breathing in? Where do I feel that sense of expansion? Is there some sort of tension that builds up at the top of my in breath? And conversely, for the out breath, noticing the difference in sensations of the out breath from the in breath. Do you feel a sense of release and settling? And as you continue to settle, how does this breath feel maybe new, different than the one before it? This new breath being birthed moment by moment. And as we sit quietly, just noticing if evoking this sense of interest in your internal experience helps to sustain your mindfulness moment to moment. And if your mind has drifted, before gently returning it to presence, take a moment just to notice where your mind has gone. What does your mind find more compelling in this moment than being present? Might be interesting. allowing for all of our experience to be seen in the light of mindfulness, not resisting parts, but being interested in all aspects of our experience. Thank you all.